In today's video, I'm giving my opinions on some NBA hot takes. This is going to be an interesting one, so no time wasted. Let's start off with the first one. The first hot take says, De'Aaron Fox has everything he needs now. Elite coaching with Pop, a generational two-way force in Wembanyama, and a system that maximizes his speed and shot creation. There are no more excuses about roster construction or being stuck in a small market rebuild. Fox needs to deliver at least one championship and multiple deep playoff runs, conference finals or better, over the next 5 years. Otherwise, he's nothing more than just another Steve Francis. So I agree with the first part of this hot take. Fox is in a much better situation in San Antonio than he was in Sacramento. One of the biggest improvements is coaching. The Kings had instability at the head coach position, especially after firing Mike Brown and replacing him with Doug Christie. Now in San Antonio, Fox is under legendary coach Greg Popovich, who has been with the Spurs for decades. There's no instability at the coaching position, and it's actually an upgrade. The hot take is also right about Wembanyama being a generational talent and how this system is built to maximize Fox's game. I also agree that Fox has no more excuses. This is the best situation he's ever been in. As for expectations, I think it's completely reasonable to expect the Spurs to win a championship and make multiple deep playoff runs in the next 5 years. Even this season, Wemby has developed faster than anybody expected, including his own team. Had the Spurs known he would push them into playoff contention this quickly, they might have made a trade for Fox earlier. Where I disagree is with the Steve Francis comparison. The parallel being drawn is that Francis played alongside a dominant center in Yao Ming, but never elevated his team due to his heavy isolation play and inefficient shooting. But I don't think that's how Fox's story will go. This hot take also seems to imply that Wemby will be as injury prone as Yao, which was a major reason things didn't work out for Francis. I don't see injuries becoming a major issue for Wemby, at least not yet, and if they do, that wouldn't be Fox's fault. Right now, if the Spurs were to lose Wemby, they'd be in a really bad spot regardless of what Fox does. Overall, I agree with the first part of the take, but the Steve Francis comparison doesn't hold up. I believe Fox's career will turn out well because playing alongside a generational talent like Wemby will ultimately allow people to look back on his career favorably. The next hot take says KD's move to Golden State was far worse than LeBron's decision to join Miami. He didn't just join a great team. He joined a 73-9 squad that had already won a title and made back-to-back finals. Worse yet, his Thunder had blown a 3-1 lead to the Warriors in the 2016 Western Conference Finals, only for KD to join the very team that had eliminated him. This is the equivalent of LeBron joining the 2010 Celtics, and we all know how much backlash he'd get if he had done that. So I totally agree with this. The way people reacted to LeBron forming the Big Three in Miami and the way KD's decision to join the Golden State was treated are just two very different animals. People love to call out LeBron for joining forces with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, but in reality, that Miami Heat team wasn't proven at the time. Sure, they were a big name trio, but they hadn't won anything yet, and LeBron was simply stepping into that to try and build something with them. It was a risk. LeBron wasn't joining a dynasty, he was joining a team with the potential to become one. On the flip side, KD joined a team that had already proven they were a championship caliber squad. The Warriors weren't just any great team, they were coming off a 73-win season and had already won a title before. KD's decision felt more like a shortcut to a title rather than a leap of faith, especially after his Thunder squad had been so close to beating them in the 2016 Western Conference Finals. It's frustrating how people turn a blind eye to KD for jumping into that already built powerhouse, but if LeBron had made a similar move, say joining the Celtics in 2010, we know he would have been crucified for it. And the reason why I think there's kind of a double standard here is the GOAT debate. Far less people have KD in the same conversations as LeBron, so naturally people flame LeBron for quote-unquote hopping on the bandwagon more than they do to KD because it fits their agenda. The third and final hot take says, I believe the East is superior to the West, and for me it comes down to the number of true title contending teams, not just playoff teams. In the West, it feels like it's really just OKC and Denver at the top. The rest of the teams, no matter how you slice it, are either playoff hopefuls or bottom feeders. Meanwhile, in the East, I can see a scenario where teams like the Cavs, Bucks, or Knicks could make it to the finals, even potentially over the Celtics. That's 4 legitimate title contenders in the East compared to maybe just 2 in the West. Now this is actually a really interesting hot take, and I think it stems from the perception that the West is in a rough spot right now. For example, the Timberwolves made it to the conference finals last year, but now they're a play-in team largely because of a questionable trade where they swapped Cat for Julius Randle. As a result, the East ended up with one of the best stretch bigs in the game, while the West lost one of its top teams. Then there's the Mavericks, who have fallen off this year. At least they didn't trade Luka out of conference, because that would have put the Western Conference in an even worse position. Another thing I realized is that it's no longer just about the Warriors coming out of the West and the Cavs out of the East like it used to be. Back then, you could pretty much bet on a finals matchup between those two teams, and the Warriors had a tougher path through the West, having to get through the Chris Paul and James Harden-led Rockets, while the Cavs mostly faced the Celtics. But those Celtics teams back then weren't as developed as the squad we're seeing now. Things were simpler back then. Now everything feels more chaotic. In the East, you've even got teams like the Pistons and Magic who have finally turned a corner after years of rebuilding. It's clear that the East is becoming a much tougher conference with more legitimate contenders than we've seen in a long time. I don't think this is going to be the case for long though, because the Western Conference has too many big market teams. Just look at how many teams are in LA. There's the Lakers, Clippers, Kings, and Warriors. The Lakers in particular will always be a team that can attract talent simply because of the size of the city and the team's legacy. Then you've got the Spurs, who now have De'Aaron Fox alongside Wemby, and that's a future contender right there. On the other hand, the Celtics in the East are getting older, and they can only keep this up for so long. So while I agree with this hot take that the East looks stronger this year, I think things will eventually even out. But what do you think? What was your favorite hot take from this video? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.